a discussion with Tamdeen Byrne, actor, Scottish actor, about parts of how we can actually fight back and how we can stand up and show solidarity with the Palestinians, which is about the cultural intifada. Tam, hi.
Yeah, hi, Tina. Hi, everybody. Just to say, first, on top of what's just been seen the other place, to get a lot of information on what actually happened on October 7th and refutals of the lies that have been perpetrated by, well, the New York Times and so many that does get touched on in the film there, Al Jazeera, is the electronic intifada. They are a real touchstone for me of trying to make sense of what's going on, finding out the actual information. There is a wealth of proof that that October the 7th was, especially on things like this Hannibal directive. I mean, where have any of the mainstream media even mentioned this term at all? And this is, a massive part of the problem, is that Al Jazeera and electronic intifada are there's only very few news agencies given anything like the truth at all, and not completely bound up in feeding the lies. But it's clearly not convincing people. People can see through it more and more now, and there is such a massive level of activity going on, and in the cultural sphere, that's what interests me most. As you said, I'm an actor, and I came across another actor. He came to Glasgow in 2007. He's only a month older than me, and his name was Giuliano Mercamus, and he had made a film of his mother's work, Arna Meir. She was a member of the Communist Party of Israel, and so was his dad. And then she had previously even been quite a overt Zionist activist, but when she was asked to attack Bedouin tribes, she rebelled and completely flipped over and turned into a class traitor as such, and then did a lot of work in Jenin refugee camp, especially with the first Intifada, and helping children there because their education system had collapsed, and she started up working there, and Giuliano went, and he'd been a very successful Israeli actor, and he went there and started filming what his mum was doing, and this eventually became a documentary. She died in '95, and Giuliano then went back to working in theatre in Israel for 7 years. But then he finished off this film, this documentary, that came out in 2004, called Arna's Children. And it's an absolutely wonderful documentary. It's on YouTube. I'll put the link up. ARNA, Arna's Children. It won many awards for it as a documentary, and it showed how theatre had been helping these children, but then the Israelis went in and destroyed it. I mean, their theatre at that time, they called it the Stone Theatre, and that was in honor of all of the children that were throwing stones at the Israeli forces, because it was a theatre of rebellion. It was it was considering itself as cultural intifada. And he then, with Zakaria Zubeidi, who has been quite famous in more recent times for being one of the 6 prisoners that escaped using the spoon just a couple of years ago. And one of the most extraordinary before October the 7th abilities of to be able to break the Israeli security, and he escaped and he was on the run, but he has been captured again since. But with Giuliano, Zakaria Zubeidi set up what they called the Freedom Theatre, and in Jenin refugee camp, and it was an extraordinary theatre that gained worldwide significance. I mean, and this is a children's youth theatre, and it shows how culture can make such a difference. You know, a tiny little place there became known throughout the world. And to the extent that Giuliano was assassinated, still never been really fully investigated of what happened to him, but he was shot through the head in his car with his 2-year-old son sitting on his lap. So, you know, they've gone about atrocities, and, you know, this has been going on. It's for decades and decades. And the Freedom Theatre has carried on since. They've been under a lot of attack. Their producer, Mustafa Shetty, is still in prison now under this administrative detention. That means that they can hold you without charge for as long as they like. And several other members of the Freedom Theatre, a children's theatre, have been banged up in similar fashion and tortured, and they destroyed the theatre. But there is still that groundswell of recognition that it's important, and it is a means of fighting back, and also a means of dealing with the whole post-traumatic stress that young people have been put through over the years, and never more so than now. So this cultural intifada, which, you know, I wanted to give the talk primarily because another guy who has become a hero to me, but sadly only since he died, Rifat Al-Aria, a lecturer at the Islamic University in Gaza, again, him assassinated in November, an extraordinary guy, and such a loss, and again, targeted specifically because of the work that he was doing culturally with young people. I wanted to then look at this whole question, and in order to explore his work and other work within that's been happening in Palestine closer, which I've only partly been able to do, but I've got the ball rolling on that score. But his lectures that he gave to his students in English, because he believed that students should learn English so that they could use that as a weapon to speak to the world, and Shakespeare being a weapon that they could use. He put a lot of store by that, of learning and understanding Shakespeare, and his students really took that up, and that to me is just extraordinary as well. There is students in Gaza who 2010, 2014, they produced these Gaza monologues, writing about what they were going through. And there was a performance of these that was called for on the, what day was that? I think October the 29th, yeah, on November the 29th. You lose track with these months. It's just been perpetual onslaught. But fundamentally, it was on the day of the UN Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. And there was a call to perform these monologues around the world. And this was done in so many countries across the world. There was a lot done here in Scotland. We in Glasgow and Edinburgh, we performed these monologues by these young Gazan youth, and they had such resonance, even though they had been written 10 years before. They augured what has been going on in the last 5 months, and there's been new ones getting written. And I've done one of them for an album that's come out that is been a fundraiser for Gaza, and it was called From Shakespeare to Gaza, a call for William Shakespeare 400 years on to come to their aid. Quite extraordinary, I find. But also this cultural intifada that has been launched this week by the Freedom Theatre and artists on the front line. It's there as an extraordinary website already of materials that can be used and techniques that can be used and material that can be used. There you go. It's the proof that this global artistic movement is happening right now. I've seen so much evidence of it here in Britain, in Scotland and Britain, and it's being it's like more, you know, in the few months, sort of in the middle of last year, I started committing much more to doing cultural work on climate, the climate emergency, and I found with that, and now with this struggle, it's in the main young women that are leading the way on these issues, and on these cultural fronts. And I find that extraordinarily inspiring, especially, you know, being an old white male commie, you tend to find that that's the sort of company you find yourself in often. And I mean, even the people that's speaking tonight is, you know, similar in a way. But it's young women that are leading the way on this in all sorts of extraordinary ways. And that's what really heartens me, that this is a struggle that is now worldwide, that is rooted in the fight for Palestinian rights and freedom, but it's also tied in with the climate, those connections. I'm seeing it. The climate groups in Glasgow are connecting, you know, parents for Fridays, which, you know, there is climate groups going on. They recognize these are the same struggles, and this is what, above all, is most important, that taking our inspiration from Palestine and on the climate, that these, our enemies, are clearly the very same, and they have exposed themselves completely. All they have to offer is war and genocide, and that is capitalism. That is the where our enemy really lies, and people are recognizing that more and more. And I can see that culture is going to be playing more and more of a part in that. And so I'm glad that this has happened now. Communist Culture Club is what's needed, and to be exploring these issues. So I'll leave it there just now. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Comrade. That was really inspiring. It's fantastic. I mean, that young Gazans or people in Gaza can use culture as a way to express themselves or fight back, but also that we can use it here as a way to show solidarity and to collectivize, isn't it? It's also, we need to collectivize and build our own organizations, our own forces to have some kind of power to stop the slaughter and stop our governments from doing what they're doing. And there are very few avenues, especially with the right to strike, right to protest being under such threat at the moment. So thank you very much, Tam.
Yeah, I'm working on a piece at the moment. It's about David Bowie's album Diamond Dogs that came out coming up for 50 years ago. That begins with the refrain, "This ain't rock and roll, this is genocide." And he wrote that album with the intention of making a musical of 1984. But Orwell's wife wouldn't let him. She wouldn't give the rights at all. So he included some songs called Big Brother in 1984, but he couldn't do the musical. But I'm putting the whole thing through the prism of Gaza, diamond dogs, the Israeli diamond trade, and dogs, packs of dogs in the streets in Gaza, eating flesh from the rubble. So that's going to be a fun piece. Yeah, I just wanted really to bring up the way that the establishment are recognizing the dangers to them of cultural intifada. It's going on to this absolutely disgraceful extent. In this country, we've seen it. I mean, Germany is supposed to be, the worst for it, but I know a young artist that had an exhibition going on at the University of the Highlands and a week, and because she had an artist from Gaza involved in it, they pulled the plugs on the exhibition less than a week before it was going to open. Chicken Shed Theatre in London, North London, that claims to be so inclusive and is a children's theatre, really. They had a set of 9 plays on that. The show had opened, short plays, and this young playwright, she was performing her own play about her trying to get in touch and communicate with her dad in Palestine. Even though the show had opened 2 nights, they pulled the plugs on her short play in it, and then tried to force the guy who reviewed the play and gave a very favorable review to her piece. They tried to get him to take out any reference to her in his review. And on International Women's Day in Brighton, the Brighton Women's Centre pulled the plugs on a stall that was going to be run by Palestinian women for children and families. And that's just the ones I've heard about. And then the Arts Council of England brought in a new doctrine saying that individuals within funded bodies, their statements could affect the company's funding. They backtracked from that, but the damage had been done. The intention, and it's as well as the state, rules and regulations, the way that they've been talking about treating. Starmer, one of his pledges that he's sticking to is take back our streets. Who do you think he's talking about? Who are they going to take the streets back from? So this is something that the left should be aware of and be recognizing and doing all they can to to fight these attacks on culture, because they're going to get worse for sure. And yeah, that's a way that we can be helping cultural organizations, while they at the same time have to find their independence, have to find their ways around these problems with public bodies and so on. But also there's the side of things that there's a young theatre director now in Brighton is going to be standing against Peter Kyle, loathsome Labour MP, quite high up now in Starmer's party, in Hove. So these are the sorts of candidates I think that we can certainly rally around more enthusiastically, maybe than Gorgeous George. But there's big fights on the hand that culture is going to be involved in, I think, in lots of different ways. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say, really.